Hello, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Manns, and I'd like to welcome you to the April 4th Coalition show. This is the September 12th, 2022 edition, and is week 419 since the closing of the North Adams Regional Hospital. The April 4th Coalition's mission statement is, we are for workers' rights and collective bargaining rights, and are against tax breaks for the rich and corporations who ship our jobs overseas. We support all the articles of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, but as is the custom, we put the emphasis on Article 23 at the start.
Okay. Article 23, Section 1. Everyone has the right to work, the free choice of employment, to just and favorable conditions of work, and protection against unemployment. Section 2. Everyone, without any discrimination, has the right to equal pay for equal work.
Number 3. Everyone who works has the right to just and favorable remuneration, ensuring for himself or herself and his or her family an existence worthy of human dignity and supplemented, if necessary, by other means of social protection. Number 4, everyone has the right to form and join trade unions for the protection of her or his interests. And as is the custom at this time, we give a big thank you to Michael Putnam, who is the program director for the community radio station, WMNBLP 107.1, for airing the audio portion of our shows on Fridays at 6 p.m., and to our awesome producer, David Fabiano, who without him, we would not be able to do this show. Before we go into the program, because today is 9/12, I thought it'd be appropriate for us to do a moment of silence for all those who lost their lives on 9/11. Okay, thank you. 9/11 was one of those most traumatic ones, and it wasn't, not only did it cut across the swath, but not only did the people in the buildings die, but many of the first responders and firefighters who are normally unionized gave their lives at that event.
Yeah, we had a fellow from Williamstown who was on that one of the planes.
Died as well.
Yeah.
Yes. I think it was Peter, right?
Yeah, Peter.
God, I can't remember.
Peter
this is terrible.
Goodman, was it?
Yeah, something like that.
Goodrich.
I know
Goodrich.
his mother
Yeah.
set up a foundation to help the young women in Afghanistan for it.
Yes, yeah.
So, forgive us because her mother passed
Sally
away as well.
Goodrich.
Maybe.
Sally Goodrich, yeah.
Sally Goodrich, Peter
Yeah.
Goodrich. See, there it is.
Yeah.
We worked it out.
Very
Yes,
nice
so-
people. So it's also September, beginning of school,
Yes, it is.
and we have a couple of Robert Reich videos having to do with the beginning of school. We usually do a Robert Reich video, but
anyway.
he seemed to have gotten into the thing. He has one video where and we're going to show him back to back. He has one video where he talks about his teacher that inspired him. And it's kind of amazing because I never thought about, like, Robert Reich is an amazing man. He's brilliant. He's a Rhodes Scholar,
Right.
but he is, he joked about it when, he was going to be labor secretary. He said, I knew it was on President Clinton's short list, but he's making about his stature because he's not very tall.
Right.
But I never thought of him as a child and all the challenges he had as a child growing up.
No, you never think
I
about
never thought about that. So this video will show you a little bit about that. And then he has another video for about 3 minutes, and it covers the issue of teachers in particular in the economy.
Okay.
At about this time each year, I think of Alice Camp. I arrived in her third grade classroom in Lewisboro Elementary School in South Salem, New York, as an extremely short, shy, insecure 8-year-old who was often bullied and mocked on the bus and made to feel like a loser on the playground and had no particular interest in school. But she saw in me something I didn't see. She fed me books, projects, and ideas. She challenged me and praised me. She made me feel special. She didn't mind if I stayed in at recess and barraged her with questions. Her enjoyment of literature made it okay for me to love books. She made me understand that I wasn't a freak, that I might even be talented. And there was no reason for me to be so sad and ashamed, so fearful, so alone in the world. I think of Mrs. Camp when I see America's teachers blamed these days for almost everything, yelled at by parents over masks, reprimanded by school boards about books they assign or let their students read, vilified by politicians for teaching about America's history of racism, even told to arm themselves against the possibility that their classrooms will be invaded by murderous young men with semi-automatics. Instead of berating our teachers, we should honor them. Rather than impose ludicrous demands on them, we should free them to teach and inspire. Instead of demeaning them, we should express our gratitude to them every day. And we should pay them at least twice as much as they are earning, or 3 times. Why in hell should investment bankers get paid fortunes for moving money from one set of pockets to another when our teachers can barely afford to live on what they make? Bankers watch over our financial capital. Teachers watch over our precious human capital, and therefore our future. I never saw Alice Camp again after 3rd grade ended for me that June of 1954. I never had a chance to thank her. She passed away long ago. I had the great fortune to have other wonderful teachers over the rest of my years of public elementary and high school, and then in college and graduate school. I don't recall thanking any of them either. But I do think of them often, and I am forever in their debt. I can't imagine a more rewarding or noble profession. There's a war being waged on America's teachers, and we must stand up for them before it's too late. Teachers watch over America's most precious asset, our children. They dedicate their lives to caring for our youth, serving as role models, and making sure that future generations are set up for success. So why on earth are we treating them so badly? Our nation's teachers are not only working long, demanding hours inside and outside of the classroom, but they're blamed these days for almost everything imaginable. They're yelled at by parents over masks,
We know who you are.
reprimanded by school boards about books they assign or let their students read.
Parents want education for their kids. They're not interested in indoctrination.
Vilified by politicians for teaching honest lessons about America's history of racism and genocide.
We will stop the radical indoctrination of our students.
Even told to arm themselves against the possibility that their classrooms might be invaded by murderous young men with semi-automatics.
A school district in North Carolina says they plan to arm schools with AR-15s.
Teachers are also making less money than they were 10 years ago. Their average salary today is around $66,000. But when adjusted for inflation, that's a $2,000 pay cut compared to 2012. As recently as 2018, nearly 600,000 public school teachers had to work a second job. We're also saddling our nation's educators with huge debt. Nearly half of teachers, 45%, have taken out student loans to pay for their advanced degrees, often required of them, with an average debt load of $55,800. On top of all of this, 94% of teachers have had to dip into their own pockets to buy school supplies. This in the richest country in the history of the world, and at a time when the average Wall Street employee bonus for 2021 hit a record high of $257,500. It would take the typical teacher almost 4 years to make that much. And that's just a bonus for Wall Street, a massive golden cherry on top of their ever sweeter salaries. I'm guessing Wall Street firms don't make traders pay for their own pencils. Are Wall Street bankers really worth that much more than the people we ask to care for and teach our children? Please. Yet none of this has stopped Republicans from accelerating their war on teachers and turning educators into political pawns in their battle to advance a radical agenda. Since January 2021, 35 states have introduced 137 bills limiting what educators are allowed to talk with their students about with regard to race, American history, politics, sexual orientation, and gender identity. Governors Greg Abbott of Texas and Ron DeSantis in Florida are poster boys for this campaign, even supporting legislation that intrudes on a teacher's ability to craft lesson plans. Republicans are quick to lob the terms critical race theory or wokeism against any curriculum that allows our youth to express their identities, advances critical thinking skills, and is honest about our nation's tragic racial history, calling it indoctrination or brainwashing. Why? Because the biggest threat facing the Republican Party is a new, multiracial generation of young people unafraid to speak truth to power. Ultimately, if we don't learn from our own history, which often means learning from our past mistakes, there's no way we can tackle our nation's most pressing problems while building a better, more inclusive future. The foundation for this future begins in the classroom. So how can we fight back against this war on America's teachers? First, pay them twice as much as they're earning, bare minimum. Second, fight for their freedom to teach. Many of the decisions that affect teachers' day-to-day work, as well as the lives of students, are made at local school board meetings. So go to one. Better yet, run for a position on your local school board. Third, listen to our teachers. Do you know what's been lost in the cultural and political war against education in this country? The voices of actual teachers. If we're going to truly support them and repair the harm done to our education system, they need to be heard. So defend our teachers, pay our teachers, value our teachers. The work they do determines our future.
Yeah,
That always hits home with me because my father was a teacher, and two of my siblings, a brother and a sister, were also teachers in the system. And you always heard the same things over and over. He actually was head of the union at one point for the teachers organization. And I don't think I ever said thank you to him for inspiring me, because I was young then and I'm thinking, well, I'm never going to do.
Now, this is your father.
This is my father.
Yeah.
You know, I said, I'm never going to follow in his footsteps. I just don't have it in me to be a teacher and stuff. And I never thought about probability is he's why I got in the union in the first place without
Right.
even thinking about it in the end run.
Right.
But I don't think I never had the chance to tell him how much he impacted my life and how much I appreciate what he did and gave in both spheres in the education, because he also worked like 3 jobs while doing all this.
Right.
So, and I never realized how hard he was doing it at that time. I
Yeah.
do now, but
Yeah, I sort of, I understand, like, my wife Sheila was on the school board for 12 years here in North Adams, but at the same time, she was a teacher at St. Stan's, you know, first grade, second grade, you know, and she was a teacher aide for a while up in Clarksburg, but those are hard jobs. I mean,
Very,
it's not like you punch the clock and you go home.
No,
The work
take
never
work
ends.
home.
The work never ends.
No,
and
they
they're always
take it
blamed.
home and they're planning over the summer, even when you think they get
Yeah.
that long break. They're planning over the summer. They're figuring out what they're going to do to freshen it next year or change it or tweak it.
Yeah.
Dad would bring homework to grade or test, and so would my sister and my brother.
Yeah, I had my wife watch that first video by Robert Reich, and you know, she said they're looking for teachers right now in North
Yeah.
Adams. They're looking for staff. She said that was unheard of, you know, for the 12 years when she was on the school committee. You know,
Right,
they-
you had a surplus at that time.
Yeah,
You didn't
right.
have enough positions to give to teachers, and now teachers are burning out, and
right. It's
can't
it's
hold
been
out.
tough during the pandemic. You know, it's
Right.
been really tough.
I think it hit the top. And yes, I agree with Robert. We should listen to them, because you can't attract until you know what they're looking for. You should certainly pay them more. There should be no reason a teacher has to dip into their salary. You should give them the supplies. They shouldn't have to dip into their salaries
Right.
to give students what they need. And you shouldn't limit education is about growing and learning for the children so that they can think, because if your children can't think in the future, can't analyze a problem, can't,
Right,
how are they going to handle?
right.
How are they going to be able to govern? You know?
Well, I think that I came across this book, too, if you have a teenager, you know, that's someone between the ages of 10 and 12, because how are these, you know, it's a very difficult time to be that age at this time.
Yes.
I haven't gotten the book yet, but I heard Ralph Nader talking about it. His wife wrote it, and it's called You Are Your Own Best Teacher. But just like Robert Reich was talking about, you have to spark your own curiosity. And it's a book that talks about imagination and intellect of tweens, and it doesn't talk down to them. It talks to them, gives them things from history that they can look on, and it makes sure that they're not treated as corporate world treats our kids as commodities.
Correct.
They're not treating them.
They advertise that
Right.
in order to get money out of parents.
Right,
or whatnot.
they're not really treating them for education, whereas the teachers in the schools, that's their job. They're not out to make $1 million when they're teaching the kids. They're there to inspire them. And for some reason, some teacher in their lives inspired them, and they decided that they wanted to become a teacher to do that. So, you know, in that book, it talks about how, you know, how the economic system is out to use kids economically, but when we have our schools and they're fully funded and teachers are paid, those people will be the ones that really, besides the parents and the
Correct.
grandparents, you know, the teachers will be there to inspire them.
To inspire and,
Yeah.
and hopefully teach the next generation so that we can save the world
Yeah,
instead of have it go up in flames. Because, I mean, I get it. I can see the political world doesn't want people thinking, because that makes it harder for them to do what they want to do without
Yes.
you notice. Because
Right.
if you're thinking, you're noticing.
yeah, that's it. We need
And
critical.
they've got this generation block now
Right.
that notices. And they want to
Right. Think
make it
of-
so there isn't another one following.
Greta Thunberg. I mean, that's, you know, that's the whole thing of pushing us forward. There's a shortage all over in our economy. And we want to show another video. It's of the, what's her name, the president
Liz
of...
Schuler?
Liz Schuler, the AFL-CIO national president. And she's talking about unions in general, not just about teachers, but on unions in general and workers in general. So maybe Dave could show that video and we'll talk a little bit about it.
Okay.
Welcome back to GMA3. As we head into Labor Day weekend, there seem to be help wanted signs everywhere you look. With the unemployment rate at a 50-year low and over 11 million job openings, the nation finds itself grappling with a labor shortage.
Joining us now is Liz Schuler, president of the AFL-CIO, Federation of 57 unions, 12.5 million members. Good afternoon. Thanks so much for spending some time with us on GMA3. A new Gallup poll shows 71% of Americans polled approve of labor unions, the highest approval in this country in more than 50 years. However, only about 14 million U.S. workers are actually in a union. So how do you account for this disparity, and what are you trying to do to change it?
Well, we're seeing an incredible rise in working people waking up and saying, you know what, we deserve better. We've come through this pandemic. We've made sacrifices. We've been working in unsafe environments and toxic work environments. We want more. And so that's why I think people are looking to unions for the first time in a long time in pretty much every job across the economy. And we are, despite the fact that our broken labor laws make it somewhat challenging to form a union, people are not standing by. They're ready to rise up, make their voices heard, and seek the change that they want in their workplaces by looking to unions.
And Liz, to that point, we've seen headlines about companies like Starbucks and Amazon seeking to unionize. Do you think that this is because of the pandemic and that presented an opportunity to bring more members into unions, or is this because of a labor shortage that's really given employees more power?
Well, Janae, it's a little bit of both. Certainly people working in unsafe environments during the pandemic, it was risky for them to speak out because they often didn't feel protected and in some cases could lose their jobs if they sounded off the alarms. Unions give you the ability to have those protections to bring your voices forward without fear. And so I think people did see the value of unions during the pandemic, particularly around safety and health. But I think the issues are universal. People want to be respected. They want dignity. They want to be heard. They want to have a voice in how their workplaces are running. And certainly in this time where people are doing more with less, they're seeing their companies making billions of dollars. They just want a piece of that pie. And it's not too much to ask to be able to go to work safely, provide for your families, and have a secure future.
Liz, it's hard these days to have any kind of conversation and not have politics creep into it. So I'll ask you this. The midterms are fast approaching. The House, Senate, by all accounts, could be up for grabs. What is the AFL-CIO doing to back candidates who will fight for issues important to your members?
Well, certainly the issues are what drives us. It's the lens through which we look at every campaign or political race across the country. But this is really about our democracy. This is about working people, making the decisions and electing the people who are going to protect them when they are elected to office. And so that's what we're doing in communities all across the country. We're galvanizing and mobilizing people, looking at the issues that matter to people: health care, decent pay, safety and health, predictable schedules, paid leave, child care, and measuring the candidates based on those issues.
And Liz, we're almost out of time, but I just want to ask you real quickly, when it comes to unions, what do you think is the biggest misconception that Americans have?
I get frustrated because people think, oh, unions, they were relevant, long ago when work was tough and dirty and unsafe. But we have laws today. We don't need unions. Far from the case. We are more relevant than ever. No workplace is off limits. So I would encourage people to make their voices heard. Come together, have a conversation with your coworkers. That's what organizing a union really means.
You said everybody wants a piece of the pie and no workplace is off limits. AFL-CIO President Liz Shuler, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks, Janae.
Well, we thank him for that report. That was very good.
Yes, it was, and I can remember wondering why the argument never flipped, because whenever I was in the union, I would be talking with a non-union member or somebody, it would be, why do you have what I don't have? And instead of saying, I want what you have, they were saying, they wanted to take it away from me, rather than let me have what I had. Yeah. And aspiring to get it themselves. They say, oh, it'll never work anymore. Unions are passé, and et cetera. And you're like sitting there going, if they're so passé, why is mine still here?
Yeah.
I'm grateful. I'm fortunate to be in one.
When I was working, I was in a union, and there was always this even the workers and the management, they would say the union. Mm-hmm. And I would correct them, because the union, we are the union.
We are. The people are the union.
They're
only as good as whoever's in them.
So when you're talking to your coworkers and you want to form a union, you have to realize you're only going to be as strong as the bond that you create between each other and the solidarity that you show to each other. And you are the union. It's not some thing far off. It's like workers.
It's not Liz Shuler. She just happens to be.
It's like the workers that organized Amazon. There was a top-down attempt down in Alabama, which was very difficult, but it was a top-down approach. But down in Manhattan,
they did
a bottom-up. And the workers organized, and they won. And they won.
Yes. And it was bottom down, bottom up at Massapequa. Here in our own local community.
Yeah.
And they're still hanging together despite having trouble with contract negotiations, but they're still together.
Famous quote by Ben Franklin: "Hang together or hang alone."
Yep. Basically, you want to hang together.
Now, there was an article on September 4th in the Washington Post, and I just encourage you all to read it. It's by E.J. DeJohn Jr. It's an opinion piece. It says, unions are on the roll and they unite a divided nation. It says, okay, It's not like labor's high tide in the 1940s and 50s yet, but unions are staging a remarkable comeback in the United States that few anticipated even a decade ago. Government policies are shifting in the direction of workers. Unions are winning workplace elections at a rapid clip. And just last week, Gallup reported approval of unions hit its highest level in 57 years. After a long stretch during which Labor Day became the occasion for trade unionism's obituary, 2022 marks a resurgence in public appreciation for collective action, collective bargaining, and the idea of solidarity. Friends of labor might well react by saying, it's about time. In truth, the new appreciation for what unions can achieve and what workers have a right to expect has been building over a long period. All the public discussions of rising inequalities in income and wealth turn out to have been far more than academic or ideological exercises. Workers felt inequality personally and are responding to it. The long-term impact of the 2008 and 2009 economic meltdown, followed by the pandemic's dislocation a decade later, tilted attitudes away from the celebration of pure market individualism in favor of labor. Gallup found that approval of unions hit a low point of 48% in 2009, 52% in 2010. They have risen ever since to 61% in 2017, 68% last year, 71% last week, a peak not reached since 1965. At a time when so many attitudes divide along racial lines, Gallup found that whites and non-whites were equally pro-labor. Approval spanned generations at 72% for those under 54, 70% among those 55 and over. Support for organized labor, close to unanimous among Democrats, is in fact bipartisan. 89% of Democrats approve of unions, as did 68% of independents and 56% of Republicans.
Well, you can only hide so long.
Yeah.
You know, the economic disparity and how something isn't working, you know, and the American economy is not, you know, not working for everyone at this
Right.
point in time.
And union is a mechanism to level that playing field.
It is indeed.
You know, we don't deny people the right, like Martin Luther King said, we don't mind if people get rich. It just would get rich a little slower.
Right.
and pay some taxes on that.
And pay some
that
taxes
way it
to
can be
help support the
redistributed
level
through
field.
the system and make pay a little, make those top pay, you know, let's put a ratio, 1 to 7 or 1 to 12 or 1 to 13 or 1 to 15, not in the hundreds. You know, let's keep it low.
I don't think anybody needs $100 billion a year to live.
No, but anyways, we only have 10 seconds left, so we have to remind everybody to vote this coming November, and you can vote early, and power to the people.
There's power in the factory, power in the land, power in the hand of the worker. But it all amounts to nothing if together we don't stand. There is power in our union. Now the lessons are